Previously on VGology, we discussed why Secret of Evermore's aspiration to be both culturally relevant and commercially successful in the United States may have been hindered by other games releasing on the Super Nintendo. This week, continuing in that same vein, we'll explore Evermore's setting and its impact on both gameplay and narrative, as compared to another notable Japanese RPG released just a few months prior. And in the process, we'll discover for ourselves what the Secret of Evermore actually is. One of the hallmarks of the Japanese-style RPG is the overworld, the world map that allows the player to quickly travel great distances on foot, by airship, or other means. It's a great mechanic in that functionally it addresses common game design challenges, most notably allowing the player to easily access previous areas without excessive backtracking, while narratively lending a sense of scale to the game's world. The overworld arguably saw its heyday on the Super Nintendo, with Mode 7, an algorithm simulating 3D, utilized in several games including Secret of Evermore to create the sensation of soaring above the overworld in a variety of flying contraptions. So while numerous RPGs have crafted worlds which allow the player to quite literally explore every corner of the globe, Evermore stands out as a setting for another reason. The areas that you can explore actually span several distinct eras: prehistoric Prehistoria, ancient Antiqua, medieval Gothica, and futuristic Omnitopia. Each features its own storyline, enemies, and economy, allowing the player a deeper experience than would be received by simply swapping tile sets. It's an interesting approach tied directly to the Secret of Evermore, that in Evermore, people's desires manifest around them as entire continents and cultures. As the player realizes this truth about the world, the objective then becomes to assist the four individuals from the main character's hometown of Podunk. Each citizen is located at the center of a different region and thereby responsible, through the magic of the world of Evermore, for the setting and time period of their respective region, in addition to many of the insidious elements that provide much of the game's challenge. One could designate the resulting gameplay a literal form of time travel, as traversing the geographical regions of Evermore leads the player through different historical periods. Yet this method is lacking the narrative potential of the cause and effect dynamics that we most often associate with time travel stories. Contrast this with the other era-spanning Square RPG to be released in 1995, Chrono Trigger, which establishes solid connections between its time periods: prehistory, antiquity, medieval, and future. This game also has a fifth time period, something of a Renaissance era, that is established as the main character's present time. Chrono Trigger was localized by a separate team at Square, while the American studio in Redmond, Washington developed Secret of Evermore. Though it was ultimately released a few months prior, Chrono Trigger likely had little to no impact on the design decisions made by the team in Redmond, though the developers weren't against including references to other Square series, as exemplified by Cecil of Final Fantasy IV making a cameo appearance as a weapons shop owner in Gothica. Nevertheless, it's interesting that both Chrono Trigger and Secret of Evermore establish worlds involving four particular eras, again, prehistory, antiquity, medieval, and future, in addition to the primary character's origin. It could be argued rather convincingly that this is merely coincidence, as these eras stand out as the most recognizably distinct and relatable periods in human civilization. But what was the allure to set these games in multiple eras in the first place? The reason these multiple eras were collectively chosen as the setting by the game's respective developers is the same reason they are so effective at enriching the player's experience. They allow the game to continually feel fresh by regularly introducing new locations and enemies, even while the underlying gameplay is affected very little, if at all, by the player's traversal of time. For both Chrono Trigger and Secret of Evermore, repetitiously bashing enemies until they explode is core to the gameplay, but by regularly swapping out not only the types of enemies the player fights, but also completely overhauling the surroundings, the game's repetition becomes markedly less noticeable. As a prime example, in Secret of Evermore, the player's dog is a constant companion, fighting alongside the main character throughout the game. Yet as they travel through the different regions and time periods, the dog evolves to match their surroundings, from a wolf to a greyhound and poodle, and even a toaster. Though his role in the battle system remains unchanged, the player is motivated to discover what other iterations the dog and enemies will take next. It's also a clever bit of game design to clearly indicate to the player that the characters have transitioned to a new era and setting, through emphasis of the dog's transformation. So while both Chrono Trigger and Secret of Evermore utilize the setting of multiple eras to their full extent in terms of enemy and location variety, it must be noted that Chrono Trigger's time travel mechanics add much more to the setting when taken as a whole. Whereas Evermore's eras are largely explored sequentially, and there is little reason to return to previous eras apart from the game's end sequence, when the player is finally rewarded with a means to fly around the overworld, Chrono Trigger does an excellent job of partitioning off parts of each era so that the player is continually unlocking new areas in different eras. The resulting increase in the usage of the time machine mechanics also has the added benefit of allowing for some great narrative moments unique to the cause and effect nature of time travel stories. For this reason, Chrono Trigger's world has an arguably larger impact on the player's experience as compared to Evermore, and given that it was released earlier, it wouldn't be far-fetched to conclude that players experiencing Secret of Evermore after having played Chrono Trigger would be somewhat underwhelmed by Evermore's era-spanning nature. This is, unfortunately, yet another reason why Secret of Evermore is ultimately an underrated gem of the Super Nintendo era. So looking back, what impact did Secret of Evermore have on the RPG landscape, specifically on sister series Secret of Mana? And what did this mean for Square's plan to dominate the US market? How did it change their plans? We'll be tackling some of these questions next week as we conclude our examination of Secret of Evermore by discussing the gameplay, difficulty, and legacy of Secret of Evermore. Subscribe to stay tuned, and we'll see you next time on VGology.